All right, we're going to continue on with the next phase of the equations. We're going to move on to what's called solving equations using the distributive property. All of you should know what the distributive property is, and we're just going to implement that or apply that process to solving equations. We've worked with, or you've worked with in the past, one-step equations, often called simple equations. We have worked this year with two-step and multi-step equations. And applying the distributive property is basically a multi-step equation because it requires more than two steps. So our topic today is solving equations using the distributive property. So if you'll make sure that you get this down, and I'll go ahead and highlight this. Didn't do too good of a job of highlighting, but you get the idea. So if you'll copy this. And then our central question is, how do I use the distributive property to solve equations? And as usual, pause the video so that you can get what you need and then start it back up. And ask questions as you're going through the video. If you have any, I'll be glad to help you out. Just ignore that second screen. All right, solving equations using the distributive property. First of all, on this page, don't copy anything down yet. So we all know what the distributive property is, okay? This is nothing but a review, so you don't need to copy anything down here. We know the distributive property is where you take a number on the outside of the parentheses, for instance, this 3 right here, and we take it and we distribute it to the inside, or the terms inside the parentheses. So we multiply 3 times x to get 3x. Then we distribute the 3 with the 2. 3 times 2 is 6, so we get 3x plus 6. And since the 3x plus 6 are not like terms, that would be our answer. And we've already talked about the factors and what terms are, so that should be nothing new to you. So let's kind of move on to the new stuff. All right, solving equations using the distributive property. As we go through this, don't copy anything down yet, okay? Because I'm going to shorten the steps for you so you don't have quite so much to copy. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the distributive property to multiply the term outside the parentheses times each term inside the parentheses. So we have steps in place for solving equations, such as using the inverse operations for addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. We've also talked about if you have a variable on both sides of the equal sign, having to move the variable. So this is just one step in a line of several different steps. And again, don't copy this down, because as I go to the next screen, we're going to make this a little bit shorter so you don't have so much to copy. All right, number 2, follow the process for solving a two-step equation. First, we're going to undo the addition, and then undo the addition or subtraction, and then we're going to undo the multiplication or division. So the first example we're going to go with is 3 times 3x minus 6 equals 18. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to split the screen so that you have this on one side and then a blank screen on the other side. And what I'm going to do on this right-hand side over here is I want to write the steps, or write up the steps for solving equations using the distributive property. And this is what I want you to copy down. So number 1, what I want you to look for from here on out is look for the distributive property. So I'm going to put apply distributive property. Okay, that's our first step. Second step, we're going to see if we can combine any like terms. On either side of the parentheses. What we're not going to do is we're not going to cross over the parentheses yet. So we're going to look on the left side to see if there's anything to combine. Look on the right side. Once we look to see if we can combine like terms, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to label that CLT, combine like terms. Third thing we're going to do is we're going to move the variable to the left side of the equation. All right, the fourth thing we're going to do is going back to what we started with. We're going to look for addition or subtraction. Fifth thing, we're going to look for multiplication or division. And then sixth thing, check your work. All right, so these are the steps we're going to take. These are a little bit more steps than what I have here on the left side because this is a little bit more comprehensive. It takes it step by step. All right, so what I want to do here is we're going to work through this using these properties over here. So the first thing I want to do, as it says, I want to apply the distributive property. If it does not exist, we go to step 2. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I do have the distributive property. I have this 3 on the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute that 3 times the 3x. So I'm going to just put here 3 times 3x. Make that 3 look a little bit better. Then we're going to distribute that 3 times that minus 6. So we're going to have the 3 times the minus or the negative 6. And as you'll notice, I'm not really putting plus signs or minus signs that are in the parentheses. I'm just kind of working through it with the distributive property. So equals 18. All right, so I took care of the first step. Second step, I'm going to look at just the left side. I'm sorry. Let me backtrack. The distributive property, all I did was show it. Now I'm going to actually apply it. So 3 times 3x gives you 9x, so I apologize for that. 3 times that negative 6 gives you a negative 18, so I'm going to put minus 18. And then finish up the problem by putting equals 18. All right, now I can move on to the second step. So I'm going to look at the left side and see if there's anything I can combine. On the left side, I have 9x minus 18. Those are not like terms, so I cannot combine them. On the right-hand side, I have just the 18, so I cannot do anything there. Since I have nothing to combine, I'm going to skip the second step, so I'm going to check it off. I did that one. Third thing, I'm going to look to see if I have a variable on either side. If I have a variable on both sides, I'm going to move the one that's on the right side of the equal sign to the left side. So on the right side of the equal sign, I do not have one, so I take care of that step. Now, I'm going to start working through the equation using inverse operations. So I'm going to look for my addition or subtraction first. I have a minus 18, so I'm going to do the inverse of a minus or a negative 18, which is a plus 18 or a positive 18. And if I add 18 there, I have to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to add 18 here. All right, the negative 18 and that positive 18 cancel out, so I'm going to drop down the 9x. And then 18 and 18 on this side, 2 positive 18s add up to give you 36. So I took care of the fourth step. So now I'm going to work through to see if I have any multiplication or division. I have 9x equals 36. 9x means multiplication, so the inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide each side by 9. The 2 9s cancel out, so that leaves the x. 36 divided by 9 is 4. So my answer for x is 4. And obviously, I want to check my work just to make sure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over and I'm going to check my work by substituting this 4 in. So my problem is 3 times 3x, which means 3 times 4. And I'm going to just write it like this, minus 6. And all of that should equal 18 if we worked it out correctly. So I'm going to go to the inside parentheses. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 minus 6 on the inside parentheses leaves you 6. And then 3 on the outside times 6 gives you 18. So that does match up with that, which proves that x does equal 4. So we took care of that first problem example here following these steps. So final step, we checked our work. So let's now move on to another problem. Let me take this off the split screen. All right, so let's try this one. I'm going to go through this one more, and then I'm going to let you do some on your own. So this isn't too long of a video. All right, so I have negative 5 on the outside, so we're going to distribute it to that 6 end. So I'm going to say, I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to say negative 5 times 6 end, and then I'm going to take that negative 5, and I'm going to distribute it to that positive 6. So I'll have a negative 5, which I'm going to say minus 5. Let me move that right up there. Times a positive 6 equals 30. All right. So I took care of showing the distributive property. So now I'm going to actually go through and distribute it. Remember, our first step that we have, step number 1, is we're going to apply the distributive property. Okay. Second step, And if you need to, you can always refer back to this right here, our second step. And as I told you all ago, is I'm going to use abbreviations. We're going to combine like terms. Third thing, I'm going to just put move variable. Fourth thing, and let me make this a little bit smaller. Fourth thing that we're going to do is we're going to take care of addition and subtraction. Fifth thing, multiplication and division. And the sixth thing, check work. And obviously you don't have to copy this down each time because you copied it down over here. Okay, so if you need it for a little checklist, copy it down. One thing it does, if you copy it down each time, it does help you learn the steps, all right, or memorize the steps. So first thing, I'm going to apply the distributive property. -5 times 6n gives you -30n. And then -5 times 6 gives you a -30. So I'm going to put -30 equals 30. So I have taken care of the first step. Let's now look to see if I can combine in like terms. There's nothing to combine on the left side. There's nothing to combine on the right side. So I skip step 2. So I've taken care of it. Let's look. Is there a variable on the right side? There's not. So I don't need to worry about moving a variable. So that takes care of that step. Now let's work through the problem using the inverse operations with adding and subtracting and then multiplying and dividing. I have a -30. So how do we get rid of a -30? We have to put in a +30. So I'm going to put +30. Then if I do that there, I've got to do the same thing on the other side. All right, so what happens when we have a +30 and a -30 or a +30 and a -30? These two cancel out. So I'm going to drop down that -30 in. And so I'm going to just write it like this. -30n. And then a +30 and another +30. That gives you a +60. Which means we've taken care of step 4. Now let's look to see if we have any multiplication or division. We do have multiplication right here, -30n, so the inverse of obvious multiplication is division. So I divide by that -30 because that's the number with the variable. So I do the same thing over here. These two cancel out, so that gives me n equals, and 60 divided by -30 gives you -2. So I have worked through this, and I got to answer -2. But we can verify our answer by checking our work. Cannot stress you how important that is. And I'm going to do this one a little bit easier, or quicker, I should say. I'm going to just do this in my head. 6 times -2 up here would be -12. A -12 plus 6 gives you a -6. So on the inside, that will give us a -6. A -5 on the outside. A -5 times a -6 gives you 30. So that proves that -2 is the right answer. So I've worked through the steps. All right. So what I want you to do now is I want you to go through and I want you to work these problems, please. So if you'll work example 3, example 4. This example with decimals works no different. It's the same kind of process, just has decimals. And then what I want you to do here, I do want you to go through these, and all I want you to do here is to determine, first of all, now I'm going to change my mind on this. What I want you to do is I want you to work this one, and this one. So if you'll work these 3 problems, forget the directions here, and then if you will work these 3 problems. Number 1 here and number 3 here may cause you some issues with these fractions, but I just want to see how you do with them because I want you to try it first before I go over it as a class. And then if you will work this problem here, and let me change this real quick. This 16 should be right here. So if you'll work these 2, and then that is it.